We're going to get started if that's okay. Plenty of time to chat afterwards. Hello and welcome. You're all very welcome to is the fifth in a programme of 6 briefing events for the ISCF Production, Innovation and Immersive Content Competition. You're all very welcome. Just to let you know, we're also live streaming this event to about 300 plus people around the UK and internationally. So I wanted to kick off today's event just to let you know a bit more about Immerse UK, which is the network that we run. Immerse UK is run out of the KTN and it's funded by Innovate UK. We're here essentially to support the growth of the UK immersive tech sector. And quite simply, we do that by helping you. So whether that's connecting you to funding like the funding we're talking about today, giving you an opportunity to meet the UKRI team, find out more about the competition brief, get an opportunity to ask as many questions as you want, or whether that's helping you connect to other people in other sectors and other industries to help you innovate, to help you grow your business, or whether that's connecting you to where the money is, because we all know you like to know where the money is. So we run a monthly newsletter. We put lots of information in it. Sign up to be a member. Doesn't cost you anything. We'll push that information out to you on a monthly basis. When you become a member, you can also create a profile on our site. You can tag yourself Audience of the Future. So you can put yourself out there as a potential partner to collaborate with, or you can find people to work with if you want to put a consortia together for this R&D comp. So at the end of the day, Immerse UK and KTN are here to help you. Please make use of us throughout the process between now and competition deadline close. So very briefly, I wanted to talk about the lineup this morning. First of all, we've got Andrew Chitty, who is Director of the Audience of the Future Challenge. He'll give you some background on ISCF and the Audience of the Future Challenge itself. That'll be followed by Matt Sampson, who's going to go into the detail of the competition, the scope of the competition. It's lots of information, so please do take photographs of the slides. They will be circulated afterwards. And save your questions for a mega Q&A session at the end. We're going to take a very short 10-minute Q&A session, actually. In between that and the competitions team are going to be the last segment of this morning's briefing event. So there'll be a short Q&A after Matt, Innovate UK competitions team, Alexis and Julie, mega Q&A at the end. That will be followed by a networking lunch upstairs. Because of the demand for this event, we're repeating the whole thing again this afternoon with another group of 150 people. So those people will be coming in as you're having lunch and leaving. So we did that on purpose to create an opportunity for you to get to meet as many people as possible who are interested in applying into this competition. So that's it. That's enough from me. I think I'm going to hand you over to Andrew Chitty to kick off this morning's briefing event. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Fiona. Hi, everyone. So as Fiona said, so I'm the Challenge Director of Audience of the Future, which is an industrial strategy challenge fund programme around immersive experiences in the creative industries. Fiona's done the timings bit, so just to put a bit of flesh on the bone, so Matt and I'll do the context, Matt will do the competition scope and process, then we'll do Q&A. And the competitions team. It's very important. If some of you will have submitted applications, some of you may have been successful in Innovate UK funding before, but for anybody who doesn't, it is a very particular process, and so it's really important that you get the opportunity with Alexis and Julie here to hear it, as it were, from the horse's mouth, rather than from Matt and I, who are trying to encourage you to apply. Julie and Alexis are trying to make sure that you apply properly. We've got some Wi-Fi. That's interesting. I hadn't put that slide in. Excellent. Fiona says that's excellent. That really is the Wi-Fi password, which you'll need because we are underground. Right, so context. So as I said, this is Audience of the Future, which some of you will have engaged with already, is a group of programmes and competitions around the adoption and exploitation of experiences enabled by immersive technology. So this isn't how we would explain it to you, but this is how we are trying to explain it to the public, because unlike other things, other areas of the industrial strategy, obviously we're talking about immersive experiences for audiences, so we are at some point going to recruit those audiences in to be part of the challenge. So this is a video that a UKI comms team have prepared that's going out. You can probably find it all over the place now.
We've told stories since the dawn of time. The best storytellers use the most exciting technology available to capture our imagination. The UK is home to some of the world's leading storytellers who will use virtual, augmented and mixed reality to turn the best ideas into
Okay, so I think what I wanted to do by that is just to set the context for Audience of the Future, in that it's not just a technology innovation programme. The idea of Audience of the Future is that it encourages projects or funds, supports projects that will develop new audiences and forms and therefore commercial revenues for the UK's creative industries. Now, we're already seeing these technologies being employed across the creative industries, and this is a wide range of technologies as well. So we've got the well-known examples, like this is the RSC Tempest done with Intel and Imaginarium, and probably other people in the room. Every time I go and mention this project, it turns out other people actually did it. This is 59 Productions opening the new theatre in Southampton. Lots of really interesting uses of kind of projection mapping. We're seeing the visitor experience sector, museums and galleries, being quite slow, but knowing that eventually augmented reality experiences where they can add data layers accessible through people's devices into visitor experience environments is going to be important. We ran a demonstrator program, which I'll touch on later. One of the areas that we looked at was sports and sports entertainment. So how do we extend the traditional broadcast viewing of sports using immersive technologies? We've seen game-like experiences, walk-through VR experiences like The Void. And I think somewhere John Cassie's in the room. I always have to say this when John's in the room. Hand up, there you go, John. So capturing other kinds of national treasures, such as David Attenborough within VR. This is Hold the World, which is a lovely experience. I hope that some of you have had the chance to try it. So we're seeing these things across being adopted within the creative industries. But how does this fit into the industrial strategy? Well, the industrial strategy is, some might say, the government's only other policy. And it's one of of identifying sectors that are particularly important to the future growth of the UK economy and supporting those through science and innovation. So it is an R&D-led strategy to support growth in particular key sectors. So as I say, it's supporting key sectors to transform or to emerge or to grow. A focus on achieving well-defined objectives. That's why everything is dressed up as a challenge. And there's a focus on productivity and new skilled jobs. So it's not a generic R&D fund. The industrial strategy is very large, and the industrial strategy challenge fund, the R&D element within it, is several £billion of new money over quite a short period. So this is a significant uplift. And it's been grouped into 4 grand challenges. So the individual projects like Audience of the Future are grouped into these 4 grand challenge areas, and indeed each one of these is an individual programme. Some of them are very large. The Faraday Battery Challenge, I think, tops in at £450 million. So it's quite a lot bigger than the amount that we have to dispose of. And Audience of the Future comes within the AI and data economy theme, which is across all sectors. So the other ones at the moment within that are next generation services. So how do we use data and advanced platforms to transform the service sector, and quantum. And there'll be another tranche of these challenges announced, I think possibly before Christmas. So within the R&D investment that the UK makes, the early announcements of the industrial strategy are to those kind of very traditional areas. As I say, automotive has its Faraday Challenge. transformation to electronic vehicles. There have been several challenges around ageing in the healthcare and life sciences sector. So one of the things that that both the research councils and the industry bodies wanted to do was to make sure that the creative industries were represented within this. And this really started with BAS. Peter Bazalgette did an independent review of the creative industries, which led to the sector deal. And at that point, I think what BAS identified was an appreciation across the various creative industry sectors that immersive was, in terms of an R&D challenge, in terms of a technology-enabled challenge, was one that spread across the sectors and was very significant. So, as Baz pointed out, immersive experiences are new forms of content, narrative mechanisms, and a new language. So the interesting thing here is, and I think this is where we followed Baz very largely, is to say this is about, ultimately it's about the content and the experiences enabled by the technology. It's not about the technology per se. So the best technology won't produce the step change without equal excellence in content production and understanding immersive as a narrative form. So we have to actually work out how to do this stuff. It's not just going to be unlocked, which is fortunate for the UK, because the UK is brilliant at the content and experience production, whether that's in terms of generating original IP or whether it's as a production centre. So underpinning that is how does our ability to use these technologies, how do we make sure that that enables us to continue being the great content producing centre that we are globally. So that turned into, in the industrial strategy, Audience of the Future programme. So we got £33 million of funding. Yes, it is not quite as much as we asked for, to be honest, but we've also got a very short time to spend this. So the industrial strategy challenge fund is entirely contained within the current spending review programme. So this money turns into a pumpkin in March 2021. So you take 18 months to talk about something, and actually that eats quite a lot into the time that we've got to spend it. So this is our third competition in the last 6 months that we've opened. We've got a couple more to go. So Audience of the Future, as I say, everything's shaped up as a challenge, and the challenge that we've set ourselves is to capture new global audiences and grow our leading market position, recognising that we already have that in creative content, products and services, by adapting, exploiting and developing immersive technologies. So again, it's that way round. The objective is to create new revenue streams through capturing new audiences by using this technology, not to develop this technology in the hope that actually it might prove exciting. So our rationale is that the immersive technologies, and we can, we're quite Catholic, I think, in our taste in terms of immersive technologies. If you've got ones we should add to the list, please tell us. But AR, VR, XR, whatever the other thing you've just put in your pitches to people about are, that these are the most important and disruptive technologies to arrive for the creative sector since the web, that they're both an opportunity and a threat to our current level of global competitiveness. We are incredibly globally competitive as an IP creator and a production centre, but since we don't control many of the hardware platforms in the UK, that doesn't necessarily follow through to the future, is our belief. And that the global opportunity, that ultimately the industrial strategy is about people making money, making successful businesses, growing their revenues globally. But the opportunity for us, in our analysis, is ultimately through the content and experiences enabled by the technology, not the platform or hardware. Although it's much more nuanced than that. So what do we mean immersive experiences? So multi-sensory, narrative or interactive audience experiences. So multi-sensory, yes. Narrative, yes. Interactive, that's an interesting one, isn't it? I think yes would be the answer to that one. Mediated through various technologies, including all the R's, haptics, advanced visualization, and other sensory interfaces. And certainly from the responses we've had to the earlier competitions, particularly the design competition, I think other sensory interfaces is an exciting and interesting area. So what we've got is £33 million of grant funding. So that's what the UKRI are putting on the table. Obviously, these are industry-led projects, so you're all supposed to bring some of your own money with that too, to make it up to about 50 million. And we've got three major programme areas, 4 competitions we've run so far. So we have, one was for £5 million to support an industry centre of excellence, which was to, over this just under 3 years now, period to develop, to provide talent development programs and experimental production, particularly focused on the screen industries. That's been a need in the screen industries to translate to the use of this technologies. I'll just in a moment say, with this is now up and running. Is there anybody from the National Centre for Immersive Storytelling in the room? That's a black mark then. They're all down on the list. There's 3 of them down on the list. I'm sure they'll be here over lunch. They better be, if anybody could text them now. So that has been awarded to a partnership led by the National Film and Television School. And we're very excited about it. It's a really interesting partnership. It has academic researchers, it has the NFTS, and it has a lot of large industry players as well. We've also opened a large demonstrator program. So this was 16 million for a series of quite large, certainly large in the immersive space, so the size of a kind of small movie, experiences that were aimed to test things at scale, because a lot of us are all working at a kind of limited scale and ambition at the moment because of the lack of the business model. So these were new experiences to advance the state of the art in audience proposition, in technology deployment, and in business modelling, and test it with real audiences at scale. So these projects will take place over the next 2 years and 3 months, and they will have to reach audiences, each of them of 100,000 public users, and they're large-scale collaborations. Now, I know many of, well, I don't know many, I know some from having spoken to you this morning who were involved in the competition, and thanks very much to the competition team for getting your feedback, so at least everybody knows where they are in that competition by now, because these were very large-scale projects. And I think one of the things that we found in the demonstrator program was that actually we were asking people to operate at a scale larger than actually they needed. So it's very important to us that everybody knows how they got on in the demonstrator competition before opening the competition that Matt will brief you on in a minute for production innovation. So we're up to there. We've then got £12 million for collaborative R&D. We've launched a small design foundations competition for early stage ideas earlier in the year, and we've got, Matt, you'll remind me, 24 projects funded out of that. Anybody? Nobody knows. Good. Something like that. And we're now looking at the largest allotment of this fund, which is into this production, innovation and immersive content. We'll also be running an investment accelerator program, either starting to engage with you all late this year and run the program next year, which will match public grant funding with equity investment from private investors. So that'll be on an individual company basis. That's probably about as much as I should say about that at the moment. Fiona's nodding. But it's just to know that that's coming down the line, which is the start of a process to get better access to finance for immersive content producers and creative technology companies. So that's it. Oh, right, yes, so they're not in the room, so I'm going to tell you what. So Story Futures Academy is the National Centre for Immersive Storytelling. Yes, you're right, no one checked NSYS was also a television programme before we came up with the acronym. So it's a £10 million investment over 3 years, £5 million from Audience of the Future, £5 million from the Creative Clusters programme. Partnership between National Film and Television School, Royal Holloway, and a bunch of industry partners, including hardware and platform partners. The objective of it, and I'm telling you this because it should be of interest to everybody, because it's open for business now. So they are going to have talent development programs, conduct technology and audience research with industry, not just for themselves, and do experimental productions and co-productions, and also provide support placements for practitioners who want to upskill themselves in immersive production. So they'll be running labs. They're going to have a writer's room that's going to run for the next 3 years for writers of immersive content. They'll be doing workshops, as I say, placements, and co-productions is very exciting. Another of the partners in the National Centre is the BFI. The BFI's film funding programmes are now open to immersive experiences as well as more traditional linear film. So I was going to say, do find them. I'll find them first and then kind of circulate them around the room at lunchtime. But they are open for business, and I think they're looking to recruit for their first labs before Christmas. for any of you who are interested. So that brings us to this, the other new element, the newest new element of the programme, and I'm not going to steal Matt's thunder, honestly, production innovation for immersive content. So it's kind of, why do this? Well, we've got 8 million available for this competition, and it's of course, it's pre-commercial projects. Everything the UKRI supports has to be pre-commercial. But what we're interested in is enabling immersive content to be produced faster, more efficiently, or in novel ways. So it's the how of doing this, rather than the demonstrators are very largely about the what of doing it, but this is very much about the how. So it's developing tools and products or services necessary to create and deliver immersive content through innovation in software, hardware, development methodology, and I should say, and I'm sure Matt will say, also distribution comes in that. So it's what we're looking for here is I suppose more widely applicable solutions, and Matt will brief you on it. So the other thing to say, and this is where I try and get the pressure that's on me off my chest and share it with the rest of you, is one of the aspects that comes out of the industrial strategy is sector deals between each industrial sector and the government. So in March this year, just after we'd got the lead on Audience of the Future from Treasury, the creative industry sector deal was produced. So this is what the expectations are from industry, led by the Creative Industries Council and from government funders. So 75% of all the money in the industrial strategy creative sector deal is this stuff. It's this programme, and it is the Creative Industries Clusters programme. So one of the things that's an overriding concern for us is, and for me particularly, is I don't want this to be the last time we get money like this. Every time there's an R&D programme or a change in R&D strategy, the medics get a lot of money, the engineers get a lot of money, all the life sciences sector gets a lot of money. I would like to think that whatever comes next after the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, we will get more money next time, having proven that we can do this stuff. So that's one of the things that kind of factor into this is we want projects that can significantly move things on. I think with this PIC, Production Innovation competition, we can take an approach where we can back quite a number of things, but we have to be looking for things that have ambition and impact, either on your own individual businesses in this case, or on the wider sector, because then we won't get our asses kicked next time the sector deal is negotiated, and we might get some more money. So I'll leave you with the overall programme objectives. By 2025, it says this on a bit of paper somewhere buried deep in the vaults of the Treasury, we're going to be creating 10% of global creative immersive content. Good question will be, how much are we creating at the moment? That would be a good question. It'd be even better answer. But I think if you look at where we are in terms of film production or TV format creation, that isn't an unrealistic aim, but it probably isn't where we are at the moment. The UK creative industry sustains its above average growth. Obviously, creative industry is the fastest growing sector of the UK economy. But then come the other ones, a low barrier of entry to producing high quality immersive content. So that's one of these objectives that this competition primarily is focused on. So it's a very high level objectives. How can we make the barrier to creating this stuff lower so that we can get more of the industry, of the wider creative industries engaged, and we can everybody can try out more ways of trying to find the thing that will actually make a difference to audiences. And I'd say we will follow this. Our next thing will be increasing private investment into the companies that like yourselves. So that's me done. Good luck. The customer support service at Innovate UK is fantastic in terms of responsiveness to questions. You will no doubt have questions after Alexis and Julie's session, if you haven't done this before, about forms. The support service line can answer that, because amazingly a lot of those questions will have been asked before, and so they'll have prepared they will have responses to that. So thanks very much, and I'm going to hand over now to Matt, who's going to actually tell you how you can get your hands on the appropriate portion of this £8 million. Thank you.
Okay, morning, folks. Thank you all for coming. It's a pretty packed room, so I will try and skip through this relatively quickly to give you the information that you need. I have been told I do talk too quickly though, so if I'm missing anything, if somebody just waves at me, and I'll slow down a bit. Also, we've got Q&A sessions, and we're here all day anyway, so if there's anything you don't quite catch, either just tell me to stop and I'll try again, or say just grab me afterwards and I'll try and explain. So as Andrew said, so my name is Matt Sansam. I'm part of Innovate UK and UKRI's AI and Data Economy team. More specifically, I'm the innovation lead for immersive technology. And really what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you how this particular competition sort of fits within that strategy that Andrew's just outlined. Talk about exactly what we're looking for in terms of the scope and the requirements, talk about the kind of key dates that we need, and say I'm not going to go into all the detail on how to make an application because that's coming after this. That's Alexis and Julie will go through all of the things you need to know. So when we get to the Q&A session after my bit, if you think you've got questions about how do I actually make the application, if you can just hold that till the end, then we can carry on. So one thing I do want to show is just to reiterate really in terms of Andrew's point is in terms of the overall strategy for this competition. This is very much aimed at the kind of the lowering the barriers of entry for the creation of high quality immersive content. That's kind of squarely where this is aimed at. And actually to give you a bit more information, I'm going to run a video hopefully. Let's see how we get on.
The government's industrial strategy is looking to support key sectors of the UK economy that can contribute future growth and future jobs. And obviously the UK's world-class creative sector is one of those areas. The Creative Industries Council identified this area of immersive experiences and immersive technologies, and that's why it's actually central to the creative industries sector deal.
My name is Matt Sansam. I'm Innovation Lead for Immersive Technology at Innovate UK, and we are launching a competition called Production Innovation for Immersive Content. The aim of this competition is to explore potential future commercial opportunities through pre-commercial projects that look to enable the creation of immersive content faster, more efficiently and in innovative ways.
So within the Audience of the Future Challenge, we've got different programs looking at different obstacles that the creative industries currently face in adopting immersive. So the Industry Centre of Excellence is looking at the new grammar of storytelling and also how we develop the talent that we have to tell stories in this new medium. The big demonstrator programs are very large projects which are trying to identify new forms of large-scale audience proposition around which we could build business models in the future. And this new competition, the Production Innovation in Immersive Content, there the idea is to look at innovation in the production workflow. So how do we make immersive content more accessible for companies, cheaper to make, and in a way that can develop the new platforms and applications that will create the great experiences of the future.
Cool, okay, thank you. So hopefully that all made sense, but I'm going to go into a bit more detail now. So just to reiterate, so this is £8 million specifically for R&D projects, and more specifically to enable UK businesses to create faster, more efficient methods of immersive content. So this is about the production efficiencies rather than the creation of the content. So it's about the combination of the tools and the technology alongside the content creation. So it's not just tools, it's not just content creation, it's the production pipeline to generate both. Actually, as a quick show of hands, how many of you have already applied for Innovate UK funding before? Okay, that's good, good. So, I mean, a fair proportion of this will be familiar, that's great, but I would encourage you just to be please be careful when it comes to the scope and the questions in terms of there are some key differences. So there's a lot of similarity, but not everything is the same, so just please keep an eye on that. So in terms of the aims of the competition, really, so what we always do as part of Innovate UK and as part of UKRI is try and identify those sectors within the UK economy that would benefit from interventions. That's the industrial strategy piece, and really kind of work out where those sectors are, and then I'd work with those businesses, identify those businesses and help them, target them, give them support and help them add value to the UK economy, really. It's all about business-led intervention in the UK. So as Andrew's already said, really, it's about enabling those businesses to develop the skills, the knowledge, the insight in order to capture those global markets, those global audiences, by adopting, exploiting, developing new immersive technologies, new immersive experiences. And as I said, this is all about helping support the UK to become a global leader in terms of immersive content and to add value ultimately to the UK economy. So specifically in terms of the scope, as I said, this is about exploring commercial opportunities in the creative industries through pre-commercial projects. What I mean by that is that these projects have to have the kind of, their eye on the prize in terms of the commercialisation of this stuff. It is still applied industrial research. They do have to be pre-commercial. This is all kind of state aid restrictions, so they're not commercial projects. They're pre-commercial R&D projects, but these are pre-commercial R&D projects that absolutely are leading to commercialisation. So there has to be a commercial angle in all of this stuff. And as I said, it's about enabling that creation of content in quicker, faster, more efficient ways. We're only looking to fund, step change innovation here. We're looking for, projects that significantly advance the current state of the art in the chosen field. This is not about business as usual. This is not about incremental product development. This is not about stuff you're doing anyway, no matter how great that is. If you're doing that stuff and it's carrying on, then that's great. We wish you well. Good luck with that stuff. What we're looking for is those really exciting kind of R&D research projects that you can't do unless you get some help from us, really. Where's the kind of step change innovation in your production pipelines that you'd love to be able to do? And public funding from us will help you do that. And like I said, even though these are pre-commercial projects, because they're the nature of the R&D funding, they do have to lead to commercialisation and exploitation of these projects. In terms of creative industries, what I mean by that, hopefully none of this is a surprise. You've seen these before. These are the standard definitions of creative industries. The very simple thing is, if it's not in one of these areas, it is not in scope. Okay, so to answer some of the questions that we quite often get asked, is immersive dance in scope? Yes, it is, because it's performing arts. So anything on that list is in scope, but it's not the implementation of creative industries technology into other areas. So if you've got an idea which is the application of creative industries into, say, education, into sport, into health, even if it's immersive, then that's not in scope for this competition. You could have health or education as sort of ultimately one of your exploitation paths, but this needs to be within the creative industries. This is very specifically a creative industries program. So to go back to the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, everything within those funds is very cookie-cutted. It's very challenge-driven. So in terms of the audience of the future, has to be creative industries, has to be immersive technology. So if you have an idea that isn't in there, maybe it's immersive but not creative, maybe it's creative but not immersive, then please do come and talk to us. There are other opportunities. We have the open competition, which is open, closes November the 14th, I believe, £20 million. There are other ways we can fund you and other ways we can support you. But in terms of this audience of the future, industrial strategy, production innovation for immersive content, it's very much creative and it's very much immersive. Okay, so if you're not in that bucket, then we'll help you look somewhere else. As I said, it's not the application of creative industries technology into other areas. Although obviously things like publication and advertising are in scope. So just, if you're not sure, come and talk to us, I think is the short answer. So in terms of what you also need to do, and these are musts, and I think all the way through this slide I've put must in red just to kind of hammer it home. Everything on this list you have to do. These are not optional extras. You have to do these things, okay? So in terms of these projects, you have to include a participant who is a content creator, and the creation of content must be part of the supply chain. So as I said before, this is not about just the technology. It's not about just production, creating immersive content. You've got to include creative content within your production pipeline. In terms of this particular thing, I say it's about the production innovation, so it's about the tools, the products or services in order to create and deliver that content. And actually, we're looking for innovation, whether that's software, hardware, or development methodologies. So any of those things are in scope, okay? But like I said, you must demonstrate those. If it isn't hitting those, then that's not in scope, I'm afraid. And as I said, we're looking for step change innovation, not incremental product development here. We're looking for those non-trivial technical challenges that you're looking to solve that we can help you solve. And as I said, this is about the creative and the technology innovation, not just the tech. What do you mean by content creators? So very specifically in this context, so an organisation within the creative industries that originates and produces creative works that be protected through intellectual property rights. This is about the commercialisation of that content. This is not about kind of, say, creating tools in isolation, creating content that can't be commercialised, or even creating content on its own. So it's got to be content that you can then commercialise and protect. In terms of some of the streams, I mean, we'll come back to this in a minute, but actually, if there is only one company in your consortium, then you have to be that content creator. So one of your companies has to be a content creator. If there's only one, that happens to be you. You have to include an SME. If there's only one, that happens to be you. So if there's only one of you in your consortium, you are an SME content creator. Otherwise, you're out of scope. Hopefully, that's fairly easy. Projects we will not fund. This is pretty much the opposite of what I just said, but it's worth being very specific. We don't fund stuff that's not in the creative industries, which hopefully is not a surprise by now. We do not fund solutions which do not enable the creation of immersive content, and we don't fund projects which are looking for funding for non-UK based partners or subcontractors. Now, to be very specific about that, we're very happy for you to work with non-UK based partners. You might have non-UK partnerships or collaborators that are enabling you to globalise, or commercialise globally. That's great. but you can't be funded as part of this if you're a non-UK company. Okay, so if you have those people in a consortium, don't ask for funding for them, because if you do, you're now out of scope. They can be part of your project, that's fine, just don't ask for funding for them. Also, in terms of to answer some of the other questions I quite often get asked, you don't have to be a registered UK legal entity at the point of application, but you absolutely do at the point of grant offer letter. So if you've got a kind of speculative idea and you're pre-startup, you've got some founders, you've got a really great idea, that's fine. You can absolutely put that idea in, but you just have to be very clear how you're going to turn that concept through to the kind of project delivery, through to commercialization, how you're going to actually deliver that stuff if you're pre-registered. And whatever you have to do, excuse me, you have to be registered in time for the grant offer letter, which will be coming out in January. It's because you've got to be a registered UK legal entity at that point, because it's a contract, so you need to be in existence. That's also true with non-UK partners who might be willing to set up UK studios as part of this. That's also fine. So if you're having conversations with non-UK people at the moment, and actually if you were successful in your pitch and as funding as part of this project, they would be willing to set up in the UK, that's great. In terms of project size, there are 2 streams for this competition, and this is quite important to make sure you get this one right. So these projects from 100,000 up to 200,000 must be single company, must be led by an SME, and to go back to my original slide, must be a content creator. Okay, that's, again, all of these are must, these are not optional extras, that's your kind of stream 1. Stream 2 is projects that are £250,000 up to £1 million, must be collaborative, must be 2 or more organisations, but you must involve at least one SME and you must involve one content creator. In this case, if you've got multiple partners in your consortium, they don't have to be the same SME as the content creator, but you do have to have at least one SME, at least one content creator. So as I said, so stream 1 is 100,000 to 250,000, single company, funding between, I think that's 6 months to 12-month projects. Second stream is 250,000 to $1 million, that's 6 months to 18-month projects, and it must be collaborative. Also, and is a very, very important point, this is total project costs, not grant cost, okay? This is the size of your project, and we will fund you at various percentages, which I'll come back to in a minute, or I'll come back to later. But this is total project size. So if you're asking for £100,000 as a stream 1, and you're an SME, and you're a content creator, and you're a micro studio, we'll give you £70,000, because we're going to fund you at 70% of that. And it gets more complicated, and that's the easy maths one that I'm going to do this morning. But if you've got multiple consortiums and research partnerships and everything else, and you're not sure, come and talk to us. You know, drop an email to support@innovateuk.gov.uk. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. Just come and ask the questions and we'll tell you, because we don't want you to get this wrong. And I would say for all of these questions, actually, these are not trick questions. We are trying to give you money. We are trying to make this program a success so that you're a success, so we add value to UK economy. Okay? They're not trick questions. If you're not sure what we mean, come and ask me. You know, come and ask the competition team. We wrote this stuff. We'll tell you exactly what we mean. I say it's not a trick. We're trying to give you the cash. So just come and ask us the questions. So in terms of what you need to be in order to be a lead partner, so you have to be a UK registered business. As I said, this is about UK businesses. And you also have to be a content creator or collaborate with a content creator. And obviously collaborations must include one SME. The other interesting piece here really is the fact that if you are leading on an application, we will only fund you for one application. So what that means is if you put in multiple applications, we will score them, we will rank them, but you will only be funded for one. Also, as you can tell from this room and the fact that we've got 2 sessions today, this is a very competitive competition. It's great, really glad to see you here, but you know, just if you've got multiple multiple applications and you're thinking of putting 2 or 3 in, I would encourage you just to have another look, pick which one you think is the strongest. You can, of course, put in multiples if they're very different technology areas or you think they're very, very different projects. That's no problem. But just, you know, I appreciate these things take time to write. They take time to submit. So just be aware of it. We are only ever going to fund you for one lead application in this competition. However, you can collaborate on another 2. So even if you're leading on one, you can collaborate on another 2. So if you've got kind of technology solution that you want to collaborate with another partnership, another consortium, then you can do that. That's not a problem at all. So you can lead on one, you can collaborate on another 2. In terms of collaborative partners, this includes businesses of any size. So while you have to be an SME to lead, in terms of the other ones, you can actually be a large organisation if you're collaborating. Also, you can be a research organisation, which includes RTOs, so things like the catapults, they can be a collaborative partner, or any public sector organisation or charities which are undertaking research. The key bit is undertaking research. As I said, this is an R&D competition. You've got to be doing the research bit to be eligible as a collaborative partner. I suppose the good news is if you're not leading, you can collaborate on as many as you like. So if you've got if you've got a technology or you're a content creator and you want to collaborate with a number of consortium, you can do that as many times as you like. The only thing I would say, if you're a micro studio of 3 people and you're collaborating on 15 bids, that will raise some questions about your ability to deliver on this stuff. So again, just submit what you think you can actually deliver on rather than being too optimistic. And obviously, non-business partners can't lead a bid because they're not allowed to lead a bid, which means they can collaborate on as many as they like. So if you are a research organisation or an RTO, you can obviously collaborate on as many of these proposals as you feel comfortable with, okay? Obvious thing really, but have a look at the guidance. So that's Innovate UK funding general guidance for applicants if you want to Google it, but we'll send all this around later on and we'll tell you about it. To be fair, if you read the guidance, you turn up at these events, you listen to this stuff, it's very competitive. You're probably in the top 50% already just by reading the rules, so that's good. Well done. That puts you in a good place. In terms of all partners, you've got to carry your project work out in the UK and you've got to intend to exploit the results in or from the UK. So what I mean by that really is that, as long as it's from the UK, that's okay. Global markets are great. You've just got to be based in the UK. So this is all about the origination point of the exploitation plan. And again, collaborative partners, international partners are all good. We don't fund them and just make sure that they're part of your exploitation plan rather than your kind of R&D piece. What else have we got? Oh yeah, got to include one SME. I'm going to say that a few times. So funding. So there's two types of funding, and I'm going to upset the webinar people because I'm going to quickly dive back and forward. So there is feasibility studies and industrial research that we fund at these levels. There's also experimental development that we fund at these levels, and I'll come back to that in a second. So in terms of the industrial research piece, that's what it says on the tin really. So if you're small or micro, we fund at 70%. If you're medium, it's 60%. If it's large, we fund at 50%. And obviously if you're experimental development. So what we mean by experimental development is that these are standard definitions, which I'm not going to go into today. I just say have a look at the guidance. They're on the website. These are not really very subjective. They're actually they're very clearly defined. So you either fit into one or the other. I would encourage you to be very careful in your choices. Obviously there are different funding levels and the implications thereof in terms of your project. So if you've got your 100k project that's applied industrial research that you're getting 70k for, if it's an experimental development, you're only going to get 45k for. So just be aware of where you're positioning. The reason for the experimental development projects is the thing that because we want to focus on the commercialization piece, I wanted to leave the door open really. There may well be some projects here that are, I'd say less researchy, but they're closer to market. So actually, we wanted you to have that option still to kind of solve some of those technical production pipeline problems and still get it to market. So that's why it's in there. But just be careful of what you're looking at, really. And again, just to reiterate, please be aware of the difference between kind of what you're getting as a grant and what we mean by the total project costs. So in terms of stream 1 being 100,000 to 250,000, those are project costs of which we fund at these percentages in terms of the grant. And obviously stream 2 is 250k up to $1 million. Again, we fund at these percentages, okay? So just sort of be aware of that when you're putting your finance sheet in. If you are unsure of any of this stuff, just well before the deadline date, send an email to support Innovate UK and just ask the question and we'll help you kind of unpick that. I mean, there are standard spreadsheets you can drop the numbers in, but saying, please don't get that wrong, because if you put your application in, you spent a lot of time putting it together, you've highlighted where all the innovation is, you've told us where the production efficiencies are, and then you've got all your finance tables wrong, then you'll be out of scope and you won't get through. So please be careful. So in terms of funding, I'll go through this relatively quickly because this is all in the guidance and I think I'm running out of time. But essentially we fund universities at 100%, i.e. 80% of full economic costing. Same with non-profit organisations and same with public sector organisations or charities. We fund all of these at 100%. The key thing here is, though, they have to be performing research activity and they have to be prepared to disseminate the results. And I guess that the important point at the end is, we're not going to fund you for stuff you've already done, unsurprisingly. You also can't match our money with other public sector money. You can't match public funding with public funding. Again, if you're not sure, email us support, but basically you can't use kind of research council funding as your match for the Innovate UK piece. That doesn't work, I'm afraid. Research organisations. The combined funding levels for research organisations are at 30%. So if you've got one research organisation, you get 30%. If you've got 15, they have to split that 30% between them. It's just capped. The idea is we're trying to fund the businesses primarily. It's great if you want to work with universities to solve those tricky research problems, but we cap their funding at 30%, so the businesses get the bulk of the funding. That is in any capacity, whether that's a kind of collaborative research partner that we're funding at 80% of full economic costing, or whether they're 100% subcontractors solving you a very specific problem, that's still capped at 30% for research organisations. So in terms of the application process itself, this is a single stage process, and what I mean by that really is for those of you who are familiar with other Innovate processes, this is not an application then an interview session. This is a single stage process. There's a written application plus a video. We also encourage you to include graphical representations for your proposals. This is immersive creative content after all. There is space in there to put annexes in. Anything you can give us in terms of visuals, wireframes, mock-ups, anything at all, it's all good. Please do include that where you can. The interesting bit really here is the video. Okay, so this is in addition to your 10 questions. So effectively there's 11 in total. The video must be 2 minutes long, or up to 2 minutes long, sorry. The assessors are already paid to look at 2 minutes, which means they probably will turn it off after 2 minutes. So don't submit 3-minute videos or anything else, because unfortunately they won't read it, they won't look at it. So also, that video is not scored, okay? You do not get a score for the video. However, that video will be taken into account for all of the other questions. So that's the kind of general context and all the rest of it, okay? You are not scored on production values. Production values do not matter. If it's a recording on a phone, if it's a slide share, if it's an animation, even if it's a great production value, that's awesome. But we're not going to score you on that. It's about the content of that video, okay? And this is really your chance to shine. This is your chance to put in extra stuff over and above the 10 questions that you've seen before, maybe, over and above those questions. There are very tight character limits on those questions because there have to be. This is your kind of 2-minute pitch to camera where you can really sell it to us. You can expand upon the proposal. You can cover the bits that you think we haven't kind of included in our questions. This really is a really useful piece. And as I said, the assessors will take everything in that video into account in addition to the other questions. So don't waste your time repeating what's in your questions because they will read that as well, okay? So don't have 2 minutes talking about your team and your delivery plan and your financial stuff that's already in the questionnaire. Use your 2 minutes to really kind of sell your proposal, okay? This really is your chance to kind of put some stuff in over and above. In terms of dates, obviously, we're here today, which is great, and this one's being recorded, so if there's bits that you missed or I kind of went too quickly, then obviously you can have a look at that. There are a couple of Q&A webinar sessions coming up in November. The idea of those really is to give you some time to go away. You've read the guidance, you've had a look at the brief, you've listened to what I've said. You can have a think about your proposals. We've got these online sessions for you to kind of go on there and ask some very specific questions. The other thing I would say is, and again, we'll talk about this later on today, if you want to talk to anyone about the sort of the scope, the kind of the strategy, the reasoning, the process, then come talk to me, come talk to my Innovate colleagues. We're very happy to talk about that. If you want to talk about the specifics of your proposal and whether or not it's a good idea and actually the kind of the writing of that stuff, please talk to my colleagues in the KTM, because I'm involved in the assessment process. I'm part of the funders panel at the end, and there's a point where I can't, I have to stop talking to you because there's a bit of a conflict there, whereas actually the KTN are not involved in that assessment process. If you want to talk about the details of your application, please go talk to them. That's what they are. It won't cost you anything. They're very good at this stuff. They won't write it for you, obviously, but they will definitely help you craft it, and they'll help you hopefully get you those extra few percentage points. And given this is a very competitive process, I can't recommend that enough. So in terms of the application itself, so the 28th of November is the deadline. That is midday. That's a proper computer says no moment. Nothing you can do about it. If you're halfway through an application process and you phone us up at 12:05 and you say there's a problem with your application, I'm really sorry, that's just nothing we can do about it. So, come to us early. If you've got problems, there are things we can do about it. I mean, please don't, but even if you call us at 11:45 on our day, there are things we can do, but don't do that. Talk to us 2 weeks in advance, and there's lots of stuff we can do, so come and help us. Especially if you've got questions about your applications, just get that stuff in early. Don't leave it right until the last minute. I've nicked one of Alexis's slides because it's a really good slide, and I'll come back to it. But this is the kind of tracking in the last few hours of when people put submissions in, okay? This happens on every single competition process. I say this everywhere I go throughout the UK. It makes no difference, but please don't be those people because it doesn't help. And in terms of the deadline, say it's the 28th of November. Now what happens from there is that we take them all together. We don't do anything until we get all of them. We bring them all in. We send them out to a group of independent assessors who are industry experts. So every application will get assessed by 5 independent experts. Okay. That comes back in, we get the feedback from that. So if you're successful, and that's great. If you're not, you'll still get the feedback from those assessors. So we give you feedback whether you're successful or not, okay? What happens is they score it for us, we stick it in a spreadsheet, we rank it, it's very competitive, we work out how many we can fund. There will be some portfolio balancing across both of those streams, and what I mean by that is this is not about choosing particular sectors, this is just making sure that the really big projects don't swamp the really little projects. That's the gist of it. So we will balance it a little bit. So if you've got a smaller project and you're worried about that, we are looking at that to make sure we get good representation in both of those streams. So that stuff will be happening. That happens early January. So the idea is that sort of by the end of January, we will come back to you and we'll tell you whether you're successful or not. If you're not, that's a shame. There are other ways we can help. So you say you'll get your feedback and there are other connections we can enable for you. But if you are successful, then you must start your project by the 1st of April 2019. And as Andrew's already said, you must finish it by the end of December, 31st of December 2020. That's basically because our funding is, runs out. Our funding has to be dealt with by the end of March 2021. So that's why there's that. And that is those, again, both hard deadlines, which is why I put the must in red. It's all good. I think that's probably about it, really. I think, Yeah, so really, that's about it. So thank you very much. Got any questions, just to reiterate, that's the email address. Please do take a picture of that slide if you want it, but it's fairly easy. Support innovateuk.gov.uk. They're really good. They know what they're talking about. They've been asked many of these questions before. The ones they haven't been asked will get tagged. They have SLA agreements to get back within 2 days. They come through to me. And then I have to reply or I get into trouble. My inbox has got something like 8,000 unread emails in it. So if you email me directly, that's great. I probably will never talk to you again. If you email customer services, they log it, they send it to me. If I don't reply, I get into trouble. Okay? So go through customer services. I'll have to give you an answer. That's my top tip for today. But there you go. And they're very good people, so have a chat to them. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Cheers.
So we're going to have a very quick comfort break if people need to leave the room for a minute. But this is a quick 5-10 minute Q&A session. A lot of the questions that are generated, I'm sure, in your mind from this morning will more than likely be dealt with in Julie and Alexis' competition application presentation. But we've got a bit of time now. Any burning questions, put your hand up. Anita's at the back of the room. I'll take the front. The only other thing to say is if anybody is tweeting, #AudienceFuture is what we're using for this challenge. Okay, so anybody?
Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay.
Well, can you wait? If you say who you are and.
Because we've got the webinar recording.
What if you started your project before the 1st of April?
That's great, but that wouldn't be funded by us at that point. So
Right, okay.
Good luck. Now the reason is because obviously part of the thing that we are looking for in terms of there's a question around public funding. So you have to explain to us why you need public funding. Okay, if you've already started and you're spending money on the production, then you clearly don't need the public funding, I'm afraid. So I would be careful with
You
that
might
one.
need more funding.
That's fine. In which case, be very specific about which is the bit that you're applying for in terms of our funding, and which is the bit that is already kind of technology that you're going to build on. So yeah, we don't fund stuff that's already happening, I'm afraid. I mean, the need for public funding is one of those questions that is tricky, but it's very binary. I mean, if you get it right, then it's great, and if you get it wrong, that sort of invalidates the rest of your project. So please be careful with that question. Generally, for us, it's about the kind of mitigation of the risk around these innovation projects. Why is there, and it is a fine balancing, why is this an amazing project that clearly you should do with massive commercial upside that you can deliver, that you can't do without our funding? And sometimes it's about risk from private funding, or it may be around the fact that if you're doing it, in evenings and weekends, it's going to take you 5 years, and public funding allows you to bring that forward 6 months to get first mover market advantage. Just sort of be careful with that question, but it is an easy one to get right, I think. Sorry, it's a long answer, but
Mark Ashmore from Future Artists. Just trying to get my head round. I'm currently doing a project, or we've been doing some R&D, but we've done it with no funding, basically, with 2 universities in Manchester, and so we've been talking about getting the funding and doing the next 18 months with it. But with 2 universities, or maybe 1 university and then 1 SME, but they can also offer a lot of in-kind support, so giving us a building to work from and space. How does that, it's probably going to be covered in the next session, but how does that go into sort of the mix, and is just trying to get my head around it, basically?
Yeah, I mean, all the eligible costs are in the guidance, so have a look at that one. But I think in terms of eligible costs, it includes things like labour, overhead, relevant travel, capital costs where they're specifically relevant to the project. Don't ask us for 50 iPads because you want them, but if there's a bunch of IT kit that you need for delivery project, that's in scope. Have a look at the guidance, really. But I mean, if you're looking at a kind of collaborative project with 1 or 2 universities, then you're into kind of stream 2, 250k, 6 months to 18-month projects, which is okay. But be aware that whether it's 1 university or 2 universities, obviously they're capped at that 30%. And where is it what's it building on, and say why is it a kind of new R&D project? But yeah, I mean, in terms of labour costs, cost in kind, that's all eligible costs. But we'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a minute. Okay. Actually, one thing just to answer a question, because again we get asked sometimes, is things like travelling to trade shows to sell the thing is not. Because that's not part of your R&D, that's part of your commercialisation and exploitation post-funding, and that's great, but that's not something we would look to fund. If there, yeah.
One question right in front.
Sorry.
Hi, this isn't quite a question, but I got very frustrated in all of the discussions that nobody actually really explains feasibility studies, industrial research, and experimental development.
Okay.
And the explanation on the website is not ideal and is not an industry language. So I've written a series of articles on innovating and demystifying UK government funding.
Excellent.
There's one, I'm Maria Ingold, Miriality, on LinkedIn, and on my website there's an article called Innovating STEAM. and it explains them in industry language.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
if that's useful to anyone, maybe I've saved you some time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so if that's if we're okay with that in terms of questions from the floor, I think it's good for Julie and Alexis to start the competition application process. Well, no, this is the 10 minutes.
This is your break.
This is the 10 minutes. So if anybody
We've got
needs a
5
comfort break, we're not going to take a break for teas and coffees. We're going to go straight into the next session. Okay, thank you everyone for bearing with us for that 5-minute break. We're ready to go again. So if we could have a bit of silence in the room, that would be fantastic, because we're also live streaming. So we want to make sure. Perfect. Thank you very much. For those of you joining us on the webinar, please do use the facility to ask as many questions as you can. Those questions are being answered as you ask them, and some of them we'll bring forward to the Q&A session. Don't worry, all of those questions won't be included in the final version of the webinar when we put it up online this evening. So don't be worried about your questions being seen by everybody else forever and ever. So let's kick off our next critically important part of the morning, which is we're delighted to have Alexis Blades and Julie Brown from the Innovate UK competitions team, and they're going to talk you through the actual detail of the application process. Thank you. Over to you both. A warm welcome for the two of them, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm Julie, Portfolio Manager at Innovate UK. Work very closely with Matt and his team on the competition process. Okay, quick look at the agenda. We're going to talk through eligibility criteria, application process, that's using our innovation funding service. We will go through the project details and the application questions. I will then hand over to Alexis, who will go through the finances, which will include the project costs and academic partners. We'll look at submitting your application, the assessment process, then project setup for successful applicants, and then we'll stop for a quick Q&A session at the end. Now, Matt has gone through an awful lot of what I'm about to go through, so I do apologise, but we're going over it again. But again, it's really, really worth taking note, and please, everything that I talk about is actually available online, which I'll go through in a minute. Okay, eligibility. So Matt has already gone through this. So the lead must be a UK-based business. You have to include at least one UK SME. You can be single or collaborative, but you must carry out your project and exploit the results in the UK and involve at least one content creator. Now there is 2 streams, so duration 6 months to 12 months. The total project cost is 100,000 to 250,000. If you're collaborative, your duration is 6 to 18 months, and the total project cost can be 250 to 1 million. All projects must start by the 1st of April 2019 and finish at the end of 31st of March 2020. These are the types of organisations that we fund, and again, you can find this all online. So businesses, we define those as small, micro, medium or large, and that's the EU definition. Again, you can find this all on the Innovate UK website. Research organisations, which can include universities, RTOs, public sector and research council institutes. Public sector organisations and charities doing the research activity, and they all must be based in the UK. Okay, in order to be eligible to receive state aid, you must pass the Undertakings in Difficulty test. This only applies to limited liability companies that are more than 3 years old. If you have a parent company, the test can be performed on your parent or holding company. You should also make sure that your business is eligible before you submit an application. If you are successful in the competition, we will apply this test as part of our viability checks. If you are unsure whether you are eligible to receive state aid, please seek legal advice. Further information is available on our website, and you can also contact our support team if you have any questions. There's a lot of information on that slide, but please do check this out before you put in an application. Participation rules. So this is where we are aiming to optimise the level of funding that we are giving to businesses, and we do also recognise the importance of the research base. So at least 70% of the eligible project costs must be incurred by a business. So the maximum level of project costs, which is 30%, that can be incurred by the research organisations in this project. Now, if you have 2 or more research organisations, they will share that 30%. Okay, collaboration. There must be at least 2 organisations claiming grant to be eligible within the application, and one has to be the lead. We need to see effective collaboration, so you need to explain in your application how all the parties will contribute to the profit and benefit from the collaboration within that application. Again, just going over what Matt said, making more than one application or resubmission. So any one business can be involved in up to 3 applications for this competition, but you can only be the lead in one. If the business is not leading, it can be a collaborator in any number of applications. Non-business partners cannot lead an application, but again can collaborate on any number. If you are successful, or unsuccessful I should say, you can use the feedback received to reapply for the same project into any round of this competition or another competition. If you do submit a project, you can only submit that twice into any of our competitions. Okay, this is just another warning, I should say, for you. If you have an outstanding final claim or independent accountant report on any live Innovate UK project, you will not be eligible to apply for grant funding in this competition or lead or a partner organisation. If you apply to a previous competition as the lead or sole company and were awarded funding by Innovate UK but did not make a substantial effort to exploit that award, we will award no more funding to you. So we are very aware that this is taxpayers' money, and we do want to give you the money, exactly as Matt said, but we do need you to understand that any funding that you've had from us before, that you've taken all the proper steps to ensure that that we've asked you in the conditional offer letter, and that you are not exploiting the funding. You're spending the money correctly. Okay, key dates, as we've said. Competition note, 1st of October. Briefing is today, which is the 18th. Submission deadline, exactly as Matt has said, is 12 o'clock, noon, 28th of November. Applicants will be informed January 2019. So now we're just going to quickly go through using the IFS system. Okay, you can go to the Innovate UK website, and the top right there you see search all funding opportunities. That will bring you up a list of all the current competitions that we have at Innovate UK. You find the competition that you want using the keyword search, and then it will pull you through to these 2 pages here. So you'll have an overview of the competition. Once you're sure that all your eligibility and all your project falls within that scope, you can click in. And then you will see there the various tabs on eligibility, scope, dates, how to apply, and all the other supporting information you need, all tabbed there. So you can have a good view, make sure that you fit all the scope of the competition before you apply. Okay, once you've logged in, you will get this view. As you go through the whole system, you have to agree the T's and C's, and you're able to view the T's and C's there. You've got the application progress bar and a little bit more information there for you. You can actually invite people to work on the application form with you, which I will show you right now. So adding in an organisation or a person into the application. As you can see there, on the right-hand or left-hand side at your view, I should say, the application team. Once you click into there, you're able to invite people into the application to help you. This is a really good way, rather than sending round emails and Word documents as such through to all the people. Anyone that you invite into the application, they can actually do it online. And you can send it through to different people as well. So if you invite a collaborator or a partner or someone in your business to help you answer a question, they can answer the question and then they can send it back for you to review. Okay, answering a question. When you do come on to answer the questions, this is what you will see. You can assign a question to a collaborator or someone else within your, or a partner within your application. You will also have the online guidance, which will be detailed online guidance for every single question. You can format your answer. You've got, I think it has 400 words per question as well, so it has a word count there for you. You can use a spell check using your web browser. You can assign questions, I think, like I said, to everybody. Yep, so we've got all that. The application form layout, as we can see here, it is split into 3 sections. So project details, application questions, and your finances. So we'll go through each of those 3 now. Okay, application process. At the very beginning, we will ask you these very few questions here. So we'll ask you the title, the timescales of your project, the research category your project falls within, the innovation area, and whether or not this is submission. Is this the first time you put this project in, or have you already submitted to us before with a project very similar? We'll ask you for a project summary. So this will be a short summary about the objectives of the competition, or the project, I should say, including what is innovative about it. A public description, again, another short summary of your project, and we will use this if you are successful in the competition, so be very wary of confidentiality around this, because this will be what will be published online should you be successful. We also ask you about scope, so how does your project align with the scope of this competition? Please bear in mind that if your competition isn't in scope, you will not be going any further in the competition. Okay, so we've got the application questions. So this is what the application questions look like and the form looks like. You've got 11 questions, so our 10 standard questions plus the one about the video, as Matt has already said. It covers 3 key areas and can be found under the How to Apply tab when you click into the competition on Innovate UK website. Okay, now, the questions have got, and this is only a small amount of the guidances with each of the questions, so I'll go through these, but I'll only talk about a few of the points. But please note, on the How to Apply page, you will see it in complete and full detail. When you are going on to answer your questions on the application form, you will have view into the full guidance, so that will help you. And just make sure that you answer all the questions within that guidance section to make sure that you fully covered everything in your answers. So question 1 is need or challenge. So what is the drive and reason for doing this project? Is your project market pull or technology push? We want to see here that there's a genuine need for your idea. So we want you to describe the main motivation for the project, the business need, the technological challenge or market opportunity. Question 2 is approach and innovation. So here we're asking you to describe what you're doing in your project and how it is an improvement on what already exists. Explain how you propose to address the need, challenge or opportunity identified. For this question, you are allowed to upload an appendix. You're allowed an appendix for questions 2, 3, 7 and 8. And this one is an appendix for diagrams or graphics to demonstrate the innovation. Again, we do have page limits on here, and we give you a megabyte of space. The assessors are told exactly how many pages that you should be uploading, so you can go up and load 10 pages, but they will actually only look at the first 2 and disregard the rest. So please be very mindful of that. Question 3 is team and resources. So here we're asking you to describe your project team. Explain why you and any partners are the right people for the job. Assessors will be looking to see that you have the right skills, experience and access to facilities. Who's involved in what role and why have you chosen them? Again, you can upload a PDF appendix to support that answer, describing the skills and experience of the main people that be working on that project in your team. Question 4 is around market awareness. So how well do you understand the market that you will be operating in? We're asking you to specify the markets you'll be targeting in the project and any other potential markets. We want you to talk about the size of the addressable market for the project outcomes and the main supply, value chains and business models in operation. And are there any barriers to entry? Question 5 is outcomes and route to market. What is the impact of your project on the business and consortium? Describe your current position in the market and supply value chains outline. Will you be extending or establishing your market position? Describe your target customers and or end users and the value proposition to them. Why would they use it or buy it? Describe your route to market. And for any research organising activity in the project, outline your plans to disseminate the project research outputs over a reasonable timescale. Question 6 is wider impact. So here we're looking at the project outside of your project team. So we're asking you to identify the economic benefits from the project to those outside the project. Identify any expected social impacts, either positively or negatively. For example, the quality of life, social exclusion, or jobs. Identify any expected environmental impacts, again, either negatively or positively, and any regional impacts of the project. Question 7 is project management. Here the assessors are looking to see that you have a well thought out project plan. Outline the main work packages of the project, indicating the relevant research category and lead partner assigned to each and the total cost of each one. Describe your approach to project management. Identify any any key tools and mechanisms that will be used to ensure successful project delivery, and highlighting your approach to managing the most innovative aspects of your project. We're asking you to outline your project plan in sufficient detail to identify any links or dependencies between work packages or milestones. Here we're allowing you an appendix, 2 A4 pages that can be submitted in terms of a Gantt chart. Question 8 is all around risks. We know innovation is risky. That's what we're here for, and that's what we're here to fund. So we're asking you to identify the key risks and uncertainties of the project. Explain as you go along how these risks will be mitigated. Again, another opportunity to upload an appendix to support this answer. It cannot be a continuation of the answer. All these appendices are to support. You can upload a risk register as an appendix. Question 9, additionality. So we're asking you to tell us the difference that public funding from Innovate UK would make to your project. Describe the likely impact of the project on the business of the partners involved. Tell us why you're not able to wholly fund the project from your own resources or any other forms of private sector funding. What would happen if this application was unsuccessful? Question 10, costs and value for money. So here assessors are looking to see that your project is reasonable and good value for money. So we're asking you to explain how the partners will finance their contribution to the project. Explain how this project represents value for money for you and the taxpayer, and how it would compare to what you would spend your money on otherwise. Justify the balance of costs and grant across the project partners, and justify any subcontractor costs and why they are critical to the project. Last is the link and password access to your video. I think Matt said you can upload a video. It can be up to 2 minutes long. It must be in a format permitted by Vimeo. And once you have uploaded it, if you can, please come out, go back in, just check it can be opened before you submit an application. It would be awful if it wasn't playable. So please do that. Remember, this isn't marked, but it is used throughout your assessment of your application. So make sure you can see it and that we can see it more than anything else. Okay, that's all for me at the moment. So I'm going to hand back over to Alexis, and she'll talk through the application finances. Thanks, Alexis.
Okay, hi, I'm Alexis, and I'm also working in the competitions team for Innovate UK for this project. So the finance section of your application, it's got 3 parts to complete, and each organisation is responsible for completing their own finances. So each organisation will be able to see the overview of the finances for the project as a whole, but they won't be able to see the details. So please rest assured there is that window between what you can see when you're putting in your own organisation's finances and what everyone else who's part of that project team will be able to see. So we're asking about your project costs, about your organisation, and about your funding. And this section will be different for academics, so we'll go through that a bit later in the slides as well. So businesses and RTOs. So basically any organisation not completing a JES form. So if you're an academic, you will be quite familiar with the JES form. So if you're not filling out a JES form, then you need to complete your project costs using the online form. So there are 7 eligible cost categories, and we'll go through each of those in more detail now. And the project cost guidance is available online, and also if you are unsure, if you've read the guidance and you're still not sure which category you should be putting costs into or whether they're eligible, please do just email support@innovateuk.gov.uk, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So labour costs, we're asking you to enter the role, gross annual salary, the number of staff, and the days that they're going to be spending on the project. The form then automatically calculates the total costs. So if you have multiple people in the same role on the same salary, enter this in the role within the project. So you could put project manager ×2. If an employee is part-time, enter their costs as a full-time equivalent. You can adjust the working days per year. So if you have different holidays in your particular organisation, you can adjust that. And when you're making grant claims against the labour costs, it's the actual costs claimed must be supported with timesheets. So overheads, we define overheads as additional costs and operational expenses incurred directly as a result of the project. So they could include additional costs for admin staff, IT, rent and utilities. And you have 3 options to select from. So if you're not claiming overheads, you can select no overheads. Our standard is 20%, and that will calculate automatically for you. If you select that you want to calculate the overheads, you will have to download an Excel sheet and then upload it as part of your answer to this question. So we class indirect overheads, the costs associated with back office functions. So that's your finance, your HR. So their primary function is to support the running of a business. So you can only claim the portion of their time in which they're supporting this particular project. So no business as usual costs in that particular category. Direct overheads, so they're the costs associated with the staff working directly on the project. So it could be laptops, desks, the actual office facilities. And again, the overheads are overheads that are incurred directly from the project. So if the project wasn't happening, these overheads wouldn't be incurred. For material costs, so these are your consumables. Enter, describe what materials you intend to use in the project, the volume and the cost. Again, it's materials directly used on the project. Residual value, if they're not completely consumed during your project, we would expect you to remove any residual costs that you might expect. But we do have capital equipment usage is our next category. So again, some people do get a bit confused between what to put in the materials section, what to put in the capital equipment. Generally, the materials is your consumables. They're going to be used up throughout the project. Capital equipment, it's equipment that either you own or you're going to buy specifically for this project. And we ask you to depreciate it based on the financial processes in your own organisation. Again, hopefully you will be inviting someone from your finance department in your company and they can help you with completing these sections. So subcontract costs. If the cost's going to be significant, then we would expect you to also justify it in your written answers to the questions. In particular, if you're anticipating using overseas subcontractors, why have you chosen that subcontractor specifically and not one based in the UK? And if you use a parent or a sister company, please ensure you listing the costs at cost. So there's no markup if you're using them as a subcontractor. Travel and subsistence costs. So these are essential meetings. So as Matt said, it's not marketing activities. Travel costs we're expecting to be economy class only. And obviously when you're making the claim, you should be prepared to submit a breakdown of these costs. And for example, splitting a trip into subsistence, accommodation and travel components will be something we'd expect when you come to actually claim. Other costs. So we are aware that there may be some other costs that don't neatly fit into those other categories. So do check the financial guidance online for what we might consider appropriate other costs. So it could be training that's directly attributable to the project. It could be licensing new technologies. If you're an SME, we do allow patent filing costs for new IP up to £7,500 in this category. Just please ensure that if you have specified this cost in another category, you're not double counting it and adding it into other costs. So once you've put in all of your project costs, you'll see at the bottom there is a tick box, and that is where each organisation is saying, yes, I agree to the terms and conditions. So as my colleague Julie said, you see those terms and conditions when you go into the overview page. Click on the link, you can download it, save it. Please do read them because they are the basis for your terms and conditions if you are successful. If you get your legal department involved, if you want them to check it over as well. It is a standard, so we don't enter into any negotiation over it, but please make sure that you're happy with what you're signing up to. The next section we asked you about is your organisation. So what we're looking for here is for you to provide the size of your organisation. So this helps the system to automatically calculate the grant that you're eligible for. The other information helps when we're doing our financial viability checks. So if you are a recent startup, you can see that it's asking for your financial overview and your last financial year. So if you are a recent startup company, you haven't yet had a financial year, you can input zeros into those fields. So if your application is successful, you, again, as Matt said, need to make sure you're registered at Companies House before any funding is released. So we're not precluding any new startups from being involved in your project. And the third section that we're asking you about in finances is around your funding. So as previously mentioned, the level of funding, it depends upon the type of organisation you are, and it also depends upon the type of research that you're carrying out. And IFS, the system automatically calculates the percentage based on the answers you've put in. So if you've selected industrial research and you've selected that you're an SME, it will calculate that your maximum is 70%. Just have a overview of that here. So as Matt's already been over, I won't go into the details, but these slides are available. There's also this information available on the Innovate UK website in the guidance for applicants. If you are a research organisation, then it's your non-economic activity which can be supported by this funding. Public sector organisations and charities, again, it's non-economic activity that would be supported by this funding. And as Matt said, the research organisations, public sector and charities, regardless of whether they're a partner or a subcontractor, they make up part of that maximum 30% that we can give to research organisations. So, for example, if your total project costs are 500,000, so if you had 5 partners, so we've got 2 SMEs here, 1 large, a university, a catapult. So the university and the catapult, so they both count as making up part of that 30%. So you can see they can both claim 100% of what their costs are, but they must be no more than 30% of the overall project costs. So again, if you're new to applying for funding for us, please just drop us a line, support@innovateuk.gov.uk. We'll be happy to explain this again for your specific circumstance. So for your funding, the system calculates the maximum funding. Obviously, you don't have to apply for the maximum level of funding, so you can enter the percentage that you want to apply for in the box. We do ask you to tell us about any other public funding that you're getting for this project. Obviously, as Matt said earlier, you can't be using 2 sources of public funding and expecting the same level of grant intervention. That's not how state aid works, unfortunately. And again, as a member of the consortium, you're agreeing to the grant terms and conditions. So if you do have any other public sector funding, it's quite a straightforward question. We're just asking you for the date that you've secured it, the funding amount. And as I say, any funding that you've received for this particular project. So if you've received it and you're using that on a completely different project, it's nothing to do with this, we're happy, we don't need to know about it. So your finance overview. So before submitting your application, please view your financial overview page. So it states the funding rules for the competition, the eligible total project costs and project duration. Please check that your figures are in line. We don't want people just being out of scope just because they've inputted the wrong figures. So again, there is that difference between total project costs and the grant funding sort. So again, please make sure that you've got those definitions right. If you do have any confusion, please just contact us. Again, well ahead of the time that you need to submit. So you can have non-grant claiming partners. So particularly if you're using non-UK partners, that's the kind of organisations that would be non-grant claiming partners. So their costs will actually count towards your total project costs, even though they're not claiming grant. The lead, you can invite them to join your application. In the finances section, they just select not requesting funding, They do have to complete the project cost section so that we take that into account, your total eligible project costs. But they won't be named in any grant offer letter if your project's successful. So if you have academic partners, they'll be quite familiar with the JES system. So it's the Research Council's Joint Electronic Submission System. It asks them for the details, including exploitation around the research for the project. They need to attach that form. And also the JES system automatically calculates the figures that they put into the Innovate UK form. So your academic partner, they have a very slimmed down version of their finances. We're just asking for the project costs. And as I say, they enter the information directly from the JES form. So it should be fairly straightforward. If they're having problems with the IFS side, then they should contact us. If they're having problems with the JES side, then they do need to contact the GES help desk, and that's the Research Council help desk. So when it comes to submitting your application, there's a summary of the project costs. So this is what is available to all of the organisations in the project. So they can't see the breakdown of what you're putting in each of those sections. But every partner for this project will be able to see that overview. Checking as the lead, you need to make sure that all of these have green ticks beside them before you can press the submit button. So the IFS system is basically alerting you in here to the fact that Empire Limited, there's something that they haven't pressed as complete on their finances. So as the lead organisation, you need to chase up and make sure that Empire have completed their finances before you're able to submit. Again, the same thing happens when you're overviewing, have the overview of the questions. IFS tells you with green ticks or red triangles which sections are marked as complete. So when you're happy that everything's complete, you press the submit application button. Then the system asks you again to make sure that you really want to submit. Please make sure you do press that second submit button, and please make sure that you actually press the submit button. It's not automatic. Just because it says it's 100% complete, the system won't pull it through until you've pressed that submit button. Again, I'm going to show you this again because it is the perfect illustration of people leaving it to the last minute, and it's a very human thing to do. But obviously, if you're trying to contact our support desk and it's 11:30, they are going to be very, very busy, and they might not be able to answer your question before 12 o'clock. So please do try and submit early. And so that will highlight if you're having any problems with IFS, or if you've got any queries around any particular questions or finances. Please do contact us early, then we can have the time to help you. So once you've submitted your application, the system generates an automatic information about what the assessment process is, what happens if you're successful, if you're unsuccessful. And I'll go through that in a bit more detail now, the assessment process, and then what happens if you are successful. You'll also be able to see on your dashboard if there's any updates. So you'll be able to see applications submitted, feedback available in project setup. So the actual assessment, so it's done by independent assessors. So they're engaged by Innovate UK. They're not employees of Innovate UK. And we've asked them what they're looking for, and they are looking for that your application provides that coherent story of what you're trying to achieve, that each of the questions supports that you have a team that has thought about this project, you've thought about how you're going to manage it, you've thought about what risks are involved, and you know how you're going to address those. And it's a clear thread throughout all of your answers that you're making good use of those appendices, that they're clear for the assessors to read. They want to be engaged by what you've written. So that is the best advice we can give. Try and be engaging and make sure that your entire application is coherent. So the assessor feedback, it will come through the IFS system. So you'll be able to see on your dashboard when it's available. You see the average score. So it's 5 assessors, so that's the average score from the 5 assessors, and you get the written feedback from each of the assessors. If you are successful, project setup, again, is within the IFS system. So the first section, which asks you about project details, that needs to be completed within 30 days of you being advised that you're successful. So that project details, it's asking for contacts for all of the organisations that are part of your project, including finance contacts, because we will need them later on in the process when we're doing our financial checks, viability on the financial liquidity of your organisation and your ability to manage the project. Collaboration agreement, this always takes longer than everyone thinks it's going to take, and this needs to be in place by your first claim. So if you've not worked with the collaborators that you're proposing before, I would suggest that you start looking at the collaboration agreement as soon as you can. If there's not already an understanding in place, it can take quite a long time, especially if you're discussing issues around intellectual property and who's actually managing the consortium. And in case there are any disputes within the consortium, those are the kind of things that need to be in your collaboration agreement. So as Innovate UK, we're contracting you, so we don't need to see the actual details. We're not worried about the details that's in your collaboration agreement, but we do need to see that everyone within your consortium has actually signed up to that collaboration agreement. So around the grant claims, they're quarterly in arrears. So if you're successful, please bear in mind this could have an impact on your cash flow, particularly if you are an SME. So you claim monthly in arrears, your monitoring officer approves that, yes, those are the costs that you've actually made in this quarter. It then comes through to Innovate UK, but again, once it's gone through the payment process, that could add a few more weeks to it. So please do bear that in mind when you're thinking about your cash flow, particularly at the start of the project. So you will be assigned a monitoring officer, and that happens on a quarterly basis. So they'll be in contact before your project starts to make sure that you've got kind of level 2 plans, to have a look at your risk register, make sure that's satisfactory, and to give you any guidance you need if you need to make any changes to your project scope, or the finances, if you need to make any changes in terms of the partners. Your monitoring officer will be able to guide you through those project change request processes. So, time for Q&A.
Brilliant. Thank you. Give you a round of applause to Julie and Alexis. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Could we have Matt and Andrew up front here for Q&A? So we've got a good bit of time allowed for this part of the session before we break for lunch. So where you can have a bit of decompression time and all of that information land. So yeah, hands up, say who you are, where you're from, and Anita's at the back, taking questions at the back. I'll take them from the front.
It's Ben Hume-Payton from Unit 9. We've got a couple of Innovate UK grants in the construction industry ongoing at the moment. Does this exclude us from this one? No, so it's just...
Okay. So in terms of, do existing Innovate UK grants exclude you for applying for this one? No, generally. Obviously, you can't sort of claim for the same thing. But no, it doesn't make a difference. I suppose the only question really is around your kind of capacity and ability to deliver on those projects. If you're already kind of capped out in terms of maximum team members, how are you going to resolve that? But yeah, there's no necessarily negative impact generally.
Kate Parkinson, also known as. We have Innovate funding for design foundations for the project that I'm interested in applying for this for. Good. That will have expired by the time this starts. Are we eligible? Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, one of the aims really behind that design foundation call was to do much earlier kind of iterations around the kind of early stage of those projects to helpfully de-risk your application process for things like this. So if you've got an output from a design foundation and the timing works, then yeah, absolutely, please do kind of apply and also include that in your application. Say, look, we're building on this project, these are the lessons learned, this is what we're then going to do. That's definitely within scope.
Okay. Stuart Headley from the University of Brighton. Bit of a dull one, but independent audit fees, who pays them, and what's the thresholds when you have to do the audits? Like, what funding levels?
So yeah, we would expect the independent audit report at the end of your project, at the very least. And yes, we do not reimburse those costs.
Sorry, and is there a level, depending on how much funding you've got, as to whether you need to do them?
No, it's a standard thing for Innovate UK.
Hello, Jane Liscombe, Circus of Dreams. I would love to know if there's where you can see what other projects have been successful in the previous challenges, and what was kind of on the radar. Is there a link we can go to?
Yes. Transparency. Yeah, I can't remember. We'll find it. We'll let you know.
To the mic.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say hi. If you go on Innovate UK, transparency data. So if you go on the website, have a look for transparency data. That will give you details of every single successful application and the amount of funding that was awarded.
Hello, John Weinbrand, University of Surrey, and various other things. So if you've got an SME and you've got a university collaborating, and there are individual who are associated with both, right? That presumably is something that crops up because there's a lot of sort of campus spin-out companies and that sort of thing. That's the first issue. Well, I'll let you do that. I've got another quick one.
Okay, but what was the question?
So is that allowed?
Yeah.
Yes, you just have to be.
So the same person would appear in both.
I'll just be very clear on kind of which of the work packages being delivered by which partner, because that will obviously affect the spend profile for the program.
Okay,
for the project.
so they just can't be in two places at once.
Yeah, and when you're entering your labour, obviously they can't be double counted. So be clear on how long they're spending kind of associated with one organisation and the other organisation.
Okay, thank you. And then the second very quick one. Simultaneous applications to more than one public fund, because there's a lot of AHRC stuff going on at the moment. There's all sorts of stuff. And the results of which, some of which is appropriate, seems to me, to this and also EPSRC. So, and one won't know the outcomes or the success or otherwise of those sorts of bids while this bid is going on, which is quite fast turnaround. So how, bearing in mind the sort of, one can't match public with public, obviously, what's the advice on that?
If it was for exactly the same project, then, and if you were successful with us and decided to take the grant from us, we would expect you to declare to the other organisation that, thank you, but we need to withdraw now because we've been successful for this project, or vice versa, if you were successful in the other one first.
But if there were different sort of sections of it, if they were sort of complementary but different work packages in the jargon, tricky.
If it's work packages in my jargon are contained within one particular project. So if you can package it like it's two different projects, that could be an option.
But I mean, also, if you're talking about kind of two applications that are that closely combined, I mean, you need to be very clear about in terms of the context for production innovation for immersive content. What are the work packages that are going to get you all the way through from that kind of initial concept through to the commercialization endpoint. So, if you've got dependencies within this project that are in another project that may not be funded, well, that's a massive risk in terms of this project. So, I'd be wary of that. I would keep them as separate as you can and as independent as you can. I would also, just as a very quick thing about risks. When we're talking about kind of risks, and apologies if this has already been covered, but in terms of risks and risk register, we're not just looking for kind of risk registers, we're looking for kind of risk management. What's the kind of mitigation of those risks? And actually, you see quite a lot of people who go, well, here are our risks, and we're going to avoid them all. And you go, well, you're not really. And actually, that sort of slightly undermines our kind of our belief in your capacity to deliver this stuff. So in terms of risk, it's about the risk management. What are the strategies around that? So that's all okay.
Question at the front here.
Jack Lewis, Neuroform Limited. So I'm an oddball. I'm a neuroscientist, but I'm a TV presenter, and my idea is about setting up enabling people to set up a studio at home and import themselves into virtual reality, so sort of YouTube generation. But I'm solo, and I want to do it all myself because I'm a control freak. No, only joking. But am I more likely to be rejected on the basis of being too risky if I'm a completely solo entity, or and if so, would it be better for me to partner with someone else? Like there is a production company that I'm in talks with, but that's a different project.
Not specifically. I mean, I think one thing I would say, the difference between you being solo and you being part of a collaborative bid has implications immediately in terms of the project size and the durations of those projects, because obviously solo is up to 250. I think there's always an issue in terms of the kind of your explanation of your ability to deliver on these projects, okay, and that will vary. If you're an existing company that's got a technology base that's looking to kind of innovate off that pipeline, and actually here's the innovation piece that we specifically need funding for, that's fine. But that's a very different kind of proposal to, we're pre-startup, it's just me, here's what I'm going to do. And that's also fine, but just in terms of the proposal, you've got to be very clear how you are going to deliver this stuff. So we don't kind of prejudice either, but you've just got to be very clear. And there will be different challenges, obviously.
Yeah, so as another reformed neuroscientist and TV producer, so it's interesting. I don't know if prejudice is the right word. I think credibility is the right thing. So how far can you get with a project like this solo? I'd be surprised if you aren't about to have some interesting conversations in the rest of the room from people who perhaps could provide that. But we are quite ambitious. These aren't feasibility studies. We've got their maximum length is under 18 months, isn't it? Effectively. So if you're looking at trying to do, that sounds like a really exciting and very ambitious idea that either needs a feasibility study, which you could do through this, but look solo, or it needs to go quite a long way in quite a short time. So I think it's not about prejudice about people doing things alone. I think it's about credibility of this kind of industrial, business-led research. So it's a business. I think that's the thing you've got to look for, and you've got to think about in the assessor mindset, what gives them confidence that you can do what you do. And if you're doing it alone, they'll have confidence to a certain stage. But if you're doing it as part of a larger entity, I guess the confidence could go quite a lot further.
Game virtual reality count.
As what?
As proof.
Well, it's one part of the evidence, isn't it? But if you're actually proposing to build a big, fairly large technology solution, then does it prove that, or do you need the credibility of a production studio, or a platform application developer to do that?
Thanks, Andrew. So, question over here.
Hi, I'm Rupert Harris from AVM. A question on financing. Do you score the finance package? And specifically, I mean, are you prejudiced against over reliance on subcontract?
So our assessors do see the detail of your finances, and they are industry experts. So we're relying on them to tell us whether the costs are appropriate, and in terms of subcontract, if you were saying you were the lead, but actually the entire of your project costs are going to subcontract, we would probably say, why are you leading on this project? Why are they subcontractors? Why are they not partners? So there's quite a lot of considerations coming to the mind of the assessors and us when we're evaluating that kind of thing.
Yeah, and to add on that one, I think some of this is about trying to support UK businesses and the building of and development of those kind of skills and pipelines. If all of your team is subcontractors who are going to scatter at the end of the project, then we're not enabling that at all. So there's definitely a point beyond sort of where significant levels of subcontracting becomes a bit of an issue. The other thing I would say, and it goes back to the point about there is the opportunity for you to work with your monitoring officers to kind of review and request scope changes and things like that. Just to be very clear, just because you've requested a change doesn't mean you'll get it. So, and also what I would say is please don't do what people do quite often, which is they have a collaborative partner in their proposal, they're scored on that, they're assessed on that. Before they even start, they're asking if they can convert that collaborative partner into a whole bunch of subcontractors, because we'll say no, because it's very clear what you've just done there. So please don't do that, okay? But yeah, subcontractors are fine up to a certain level.
So Mark Ashmore again from Future Artists. So I guess my question is going to kind of end in because obviously this is pre-commercialisation and it's R&D. I've got, so I'm not, without giving my idea away, but basically I've got 2 universities. I've got 18 months experience creating virtual reality labs. So that means we've got a little team that's slowly coming together. But we've also done VR arcades with Warner Brothers, and we're a preferred supplier for Intu, which is the shopping centres, to put kind of entertainments, video game entertainments into them. So the scope of my project is to solve a problem with retail with something we're going to create original content and then bring the audience together. Okay. How far in my application do I go with saying, well, we could go into Intu and start commercialising the project quite quickly, or should we say, well, let's say that's theoretical and stop at a certain point and just develop the thing and conceptually do it that way?
Yeah, I mean, this is, in terms of these proposals, they are obviously still pre-commercial and they're still the applied research piece. So you can go quite far, but the point is that we're funding you to sort of solve those non-trivial technical problems on the point you get to it. I think the more you can say in terms of the ultimate commercialization and the exploitation and dissemination of that stuff, the better, because actually that sort of speaks to, you know, the market and the market potential of the proposal, which is all great. But in terms of the bit we're going to fund, it's the bit to get you to that point.
Because I have a lot of, obviously, data from experience, so I guess it reduces the risk, and we can show that. Or have we gone too far and maybe we just pull it back?
Well, I suppose it depends on which bit do you still need help to research. Because if you've already kind of got it to a certain point where you know what the problems are and you've sort of you're on a pathway to do that, and you've already got kind of businesses you're working with or universities you're working with, that's interesting, but you're slightly undermining your need for funding argument and the research.
I guess just so quickly, I was a guest of Oculus, and obviously we saw the Oculus Quest that's not out yet, which is going to revolutionise immersive entertainment in spaces. And so that tech comes out in spring next year, and we've not worked on it, developed on it or anything. Okay. And that's what we've got in mind for taking this. So it's something that's untried, but it's taking experience and applying it to some new hardware and then taking it to an audience that we've already started to develop. So there is a huge problem. We've never used an Oculus Quest before in our lives. Never even held one except at the trade fair. And now we're going to develop for this new piece of kit. And so that's where we need the funding for.
Okay.
That comes out in spring.
I suppose that's interesting. What's making me pause is what we're not looking to do is effectively just, the port of an existing kind of concept, an existing technology, an existing production pipelines.
We haven't created anything, and we haven't worked with that headset, but we know the.
I guess if you've got the kind of, if you know what the concept is and the sort of high level proposal, and actually that's your kind of technology path, and there are technical challenges to solve along the way, and actually ultimately this is about reducing the barriers and the kind of the cost of generating content and immersive content to then commercialise. Yes. What I would say actually at this point is probably go talk to the KTM when you've got an idea of the proposal you're looking at in a bit more detail. Is go talk to those guys, and they'll help you focus it on the relevant areas. It may be that actually what we fund is a bit of the kind of production pipeline innovation as part of an overall larger project, which is not relevant to us. So we'd be focusing on the kind of the R&D bit in the middle of it, which would get you to there, and then you can talk about the commercialisation path within your application, and that's all good. But we would focus on a particular piece that is.
That's what I'm thinking with the university bit and the lab bit we've got here. So yeah.
But I think when you've got something a bit more kind of ready to write down, have a chat with the KTN folks, and they'll help.
Alec Robertson, Independent Design Futures. A couple of questions. One is clearly this competition is very popular. You've got 2 sessions. From past experience, what's the broad take-up in terms of success? A 4-to-1, 5-to-1 application to a successful application.
I'm not sure that's ever a useful answer to give, because it is competitive, and it sort of depends on how many other people get funded. We're looking at funding around about 20 projects split across multiple streams. So you can kind of work it backwards from that. We tend to fund around about, and again I'm not sure how useful this is, but Smart used to be around sort of 19%, 16% sort of margin, so less than 20% is what we tend to fund. So it is competitive, but like I said, the fact that you guys are here listening to briefings, looking at documents and crafting applications puts you top half straight away, so that's all good.
The second question is the wider impact. I think is sometimes underrated in the sense that the direct impact for a company, profitability, jobs, etc., might be quite good or whatever. But the secondary impact of the clients of that company could be far greater.
Yeah.
And therefore, an application which has powerful secondary impacts may actually be very positive. I don't know whether that needs stressing.
That's great. Yeah, make sure that gets included. I mean, before we were AI and data economy, we were emerging and enabling technology. So we understand that concept around enabling technologies impacting kind of multiple partners, and also there are kind of non-technical implications of some of those innovations as well. And it's all worth putting down if you've got kind of wider impacts and wider UK benefits.
There is that question obviously on wider benefits. So it is purely focusing outside of your project team. Either could be within the creative industries, could be maybe spill over to other industries, and different areas of society even.
I'd just say, that is a really important point. The 33 million that we've got to dispense can't achieve what we're trying to do by direct impact alone, basically. So it has to be not only direct impact, but the impact on the rest of the sector. I think client impact is a really interesting one for a competition that might be, one way of viewing it, is about enabling applications or enabling workflows that have a wider impact. So I would take the opportunity to make that case as strongly as possible in that question, perhaps at the expense of the more expansive version of that question that everybody gets around the environmental impacts or those kind of things. If you think there are indirect commercial impacts that you can spell out, please do.
Actually, one thing I wanted to add around the market and kind of market awareness, because it sort of talks to the commercialisation of this stuff, is when you're talking about your potential markets and target audiences and all of that kind of good stuff, is please be specific. Don't, you see applications going, it's everyone with an iPhone. And you go, no, it isn't. It's not everyone on the internet. What is your specific target market? So we want to know that you understand what your target market is. If you're coming to pitch us, it's, I don't know, a social media platform where you're connecting with friends and sending messages and uploading photos, and it's amazing because no one's ever done that, then we're going to question you because you clearly don't understand the market you're getting into. So from one hand, we want to see that you understand your target market, you know where your target audience is, you know where your commercialisation path is going to be. The second part of that is we also want to see how you're going to build market share and what's your kind of route to commercialisation. So, if your target market is $1 billion, how are you going to get your 10% that you've just said in your application? Don't say, well, it's target market's this, it's everyone with an iPhone, we're going to do 10%, we're going to make millions. That doesn't mean anything to anybody. So assumptions are fine in that process. If you're saying, well, here's our target market, here are our assumptions, we're going to base it on X, it's going to give us Y, we're going to do Z, we're going to commercialise it, and this is going to be our end result. That's all fine. Just state what those assumptions are going to be, and then we will assess that in the context of your application and your ability to deliver on that stuff. So in terms of that commercial markets, it's about understanding what your market is, but also being very clear how you're going to then build market share in order to commercialisation, which kind of comes back to the wider market benefits as well.
Any other questions? One more.
There was the slide, Jane Liscombe again, the slide that had the feasibility versus experimental, and this lovely lady, was it Maria Engold, who has the demystifying in industrial. Could you give us just your version before we go and look at this lovely lady's take of what that is, what the difference is?
In terms of applied industrial research versus the experimental development?
Yes.
Not really. In as much as, obviously, what I don't want to do is start kind of giving you the definitions, because A, I can't do them off the top of my head, and B, they're all written down, and I wouldn't want you to get the wrong idea. Sorry. So I really would have a look at those definitions on our website, and we can be clear about it. I suppose that conceptually, it's about the fact is, in terms of applied industrial research, I mean, where we sit in terms of UKRI and generally our funding programmes is between the research councils and between kind of commercial intervention. So we're not deep dive research. We're not kind of the intervention in commercial markets. We're the implied industrial research bit in the middle. It's about, let's say, solving those non-trivial technical problems that need research to solve in order for you to get to that point where you've got a project you can then deliver on. The reason for allowing the experimental development is just because, in terms of the definitions and the differences between applied industrial research and experimental development, which is the bit I'm not talking about, those are generally slightly closer to commercialisation, which is why the funding levels are lower, because those are the kind of state aid restrictions under which we operate. So that's the reason for having it. Normally we don't. Actually, if you look at a lot of the other Innovate UK projects, we tend to focus on applied industrial research. But in this particular case, because it's about full production pipeline, generation of creative immersive content, and deployment and commercialisation of that content, we wanted to give people the opportunity.
I suppose the other answer to that question is it's up to you guys to define that stuff. You know the problems you're trying to solve. You know the challenge space, the problem areas. You know the innovation that you're proposing to us in order to solve those. Look at those, and then within the context of whether it'll fit in one definition or the other. Do we still allow people to split work packages?
Yes.
So you can do that. So the other thing is, if you've got a project that is, starts off as applied industrial research, and some of the later work packages sort of turn into experimental development, you can, within your spend profile, do that and sort of apply for different levels of funding for those different work packages. I really would urge caution, though, because you're putting this in front of assessors and you're trying to get your idea across, and if it's unclear kind of where you're sitting, then you're opening yourselves up to sort of some interpretation of whether or not that thing that you said was implied industrial research is actually experimental development or not on individual work packages. So you can do that if you want. That's entirely fine. I really would encourage you to come and talk to us, though, before you do that. So if you've got a kind of split proposal, or you think it's in one or the other, just come and ask us and we'll have a look at it and we'll tell you. Or the KTN guys can tell you as well. Yeah. Okay.
There's two more questions at the back.
I have a microphone. John Weinberg again. This is one's for Andrew, I think. There was a mention...
Did you bring your own, John?
I always bring my own, yeah. There was a mention about, content development, pipelines, all that, and then there's a mention of distribution, and then it kind of went away from all discussion. So I just want to get clear on this, because it might be very important for something that I'm doing. Distribution, deployment, enablement, all that sort of stuff. What do you mean?
You go first.
Okay, I'll have a stab at that one. Distribution sort of is within scope as long as it's within the context of those production pipelines. So it can't just be, here is a proposal to kind of distribute immersive content. That's not within scope. If there's if there's an entire production pipeline that includes, I was chatting to somebody earlier actually, but includes a kind of a content creator in order to kind of prove the technology. Like I said, it's not just the tech, it's not just the content. So no matter how innovative the immersive content is on its own, it's about the production pipeline. So if you've got a production pipeline with a content creator that's then running you through into a kind of distribution channel, and your proposal is about the production efficiencies to get it into that channel and distribute it, then that's in scope. If it's just, we've got some content, we're going to see how we can distribute it faster, not really.
But I think the other thing, John, is to think about distribution in terms of making this stuff more accessible. So we talked about making production more accessible through middleware, through platforms, through workflow changes. I think the distribution element comes there in making this stuff more accessible in distribution terms as well. So it's a platform innovation is probably one of the ways to think about that.
Yeah, projection.
I would, you could call that distribution. I might call it display rather than distribution. I think there's a difference between the two.
Probably not helping.
Display. Don't know. If we were to say we'll take that one away and think of reasons why, we'll come back to you and say no. That probably might be the best way, because I think display isn't. Yeah. I think display is a different technology, isn't it? It's trying to solve a different problem.
Okay.
Two more questions. Anita, have you got someone at the back? Yes, I've got two more here.
Hi, my name's Daniel. I co-founded a outdoor media display company called LightVert, and we specialize in a new type of architectural scale persistence of vision display. We have successfully completed an Innovate UK Smart Grant before, and thank you very much for all the hard work of the team there. It was really, really very useful. My question is, we're interested in this particular competition, but we're also really interested in the demonstration competition. I was wondering if you guys could put a little more color on if and when the next one may be.
So the big demonstrator competition, there is only one. We have had we've only had the resources to run one competition. We are right towards the end of that competition process. We're not able at the moment to make any public announcements on it. In fact, we may be waiting on ministerial announcements if they think that the resultant successful projects are so attractive, which I think there will be. So there won't be a subsequent round of that. But what there will be, I think, is once those projects start getting up and running, is there'll be a process as they become public of opportunities to engage with them. It's very important to us that they aren't, kind of closed projects. They're really exciting projects. They're projects that have a lot of problems to solve, and a lot of opportunities that they have thought through about how they meet audiences, which, for instance, different display technologies may well be very relevant for. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to work with the Digital Catapult to do an engagement program around those projects, so they're not sealed off from the world and suddenly appear fully formed, kind of 12, 14 months hence and start engaging with the public, but to actually identify challenges within them and engage other people who may have thought deeply about how you might solve those problems. So hopefully that's reasonably clear.
Yeah, just also as well, I think while we won't necessarily run another demonstrator program, there are other opportunities for funding. So say Open Round 3, I think it is, but Open competition is currently open, although they are changing the name, so I don't have to keep doing Open is open and Open is closed and Open is still open. So Open is open until the 14th of November, which is 20 million, and that is everything from, say, 25k to 2 million. It's 6 months to 2 years. It's single company, it's collaborative, it's feasibility, it's collaborative R&D. So that, essentially, so the Industrial Strategy Challenge funds are great, but they are either a creative immersive, or they're robots in hostile environments, or they're batteries. There are very specific challenges that we are looking to address, whereas Open is everything else. So if you're looking at this and maybe you miss an opportunity, they're still open. The other thing is, it's not just about the funding. There's other stuff that we do around sort of connecting people and collaborating with other organisations. So quick plug, I'm sure Fiona's done it already, but there's immerseuk.org. So if you just want to sort of meet relevant people in terms of the businesses you're looking for, whether it's content creators in the context of this competition, or just more broadly in terms of the immersive space, we have that support, that's there. There's the Digital Catapult, they have a programme that's working on immersive tech. So immersive tech is one of their 4 areas of focus. I think it's digital manufacturing, digital health, AI and immersive tech. So they've run things like the Creative XR program, which is, I think there's a follow-on fund with Arts Council funding. So there are other ways that we can help. So just come and grab us afterwards and we'll talk.
And just to add, there are lots of ISCF challenge funds out there, and even in the corners of those challenge funds, even though they may explicitly not say immersive technologies, if you read the scope, there's plenty of opportunity in there for disruptive solutions. So I would urge you to take a look at the other ISCF challenges too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, I'm William Latham from Goldsmiths. We cover research into VR, machine learning, real-time graphics and games, and we also made a bid for the other big bid, the fantastic consortium. Sorry, I'll hold a bit nearer. So the real question I've got is about, today's been really useful because we've got a much better idea of what this bid is about, and I now have a slightly clearer idea of how it differs from the other one that we submitted.
Yeah.
I think, just. So really, what the question is about, do you want something quite mainstream or do you want something a bit more experimental? And what is the production pipeline case study that you can hold up? Is it something in the games industry? Would that be if you had to hold up an example, is that what you'd hold up? Or
no.
What it's quite hard to actually really understand what the scope is.
I suppose I'm a bit wary of giving examples because then people tend to fixate on the examples and they go, oh, okay, well, Matt said it's in the game sector and it's around this, so that's what we're going to focus on. I think it's up to you guys in terms of, I say you need to define what the problem space is around this stuff and then come to us with the innovative proposals. And we've tried to keep it as open as possible so that you can come and tell us what you think is the right answer to that question. The more restrictive we get, the more I worry that we would end up kind of losing some really innovative stuff off the edges. So to kind of answer your first question, we're not. There's no sort of prejudice either way in terms of whether it's less innovative or more innovative. When you will be scored on innovation, and actually we're okay with risk. With the UK's Innovation Agency, risk is fine. We understand these are R&D projects with an element of risk to them. So we would expect to see some really interesting projects, which sort of leads through to the fact that actually we also don't necessarily, as much as it would be great if every one of these was successful, we're not expecting them all to succeed because if there are difficult problems to solve and you try and solve them and it turns out they can't be solved, well, that's still useful, valuable information. So I think it's okay. So I wouldn't say, we're not looking for just standard projects here, and like I say, we're not looking for incremental updates on stuff you've already done before. We're looking for that kind of step change innovation in that production pipeline. So yeah, up to you guys.
Hi, my name's Gaynor Flynn. I'm an artist. I've worked in the interactive kinetic space for a while, with my company Being Human globally. As somebody that's normally historically I prefer not to say ticker, I can't believe I'm asking this, but within your processes, do you look at gender and diversity at all within the design of your application and also in the successful applicants? Particularly interested in gender, to be honest.
Yes, it's the short version. I mean, we do a lot of portfolio analysis. We're running kind of women in innovation competitions at the moment. Those are live. It sort of depends. Yes, it's a short version. We do look at it, and we do, but we look at it from a sort of portfolio view and say, well, okay, where's the sort of the gender balance in the applications? We've also recently, and very deliberately, how can I put this without getting into trouble? We looked to refresh our assessor pool. So we opened that up to applications from people, and we had something like 115 applicants in terms of the last time we did that. So new assessors to get a better,
more
diverse pool. Yeah. So the last time I said this, I got in trouble because I used the wrong phrase. We were looking to refresh that pool and make sure we had good representation within that pool. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, we look at it quite a lot. Yeah.
I think we'll have that. Andrew, brilliant. Thanks. I think we've got to wrap up now, and just to point out. Andrew mentioned the National Centre for Immersive Storytelling earlier. Mark is now in the room. You put your hand up. If anybody's any questions, they can direct it towards Mark. We've gone through a lot. We've kept you in this room for nearly 2.5 hours. All the team who are around, put their hands up. Anybody wearing one of these coloured lanyards as well, please find us over lunch. Come and talk, ask for more questions. For those joining us on the webinar, I think Matt's really clearly outlined all the different routes for support and help. Do make the most of it. Stay for Lunch Network, and I'd like to give a big round of applause to the competition team, Alexis and Julie, to Matt and Andrew, and to you for joining us today. Thank you.